When Napoleon Bonaparte was forced to relinquish his authority for the first time in 1814, the French emperor was exiled to the small island off the coast of Italy called Elba. His trip to the island is the inspiration for a famous palindrome. Actually, if you invert those letters, it is a palindrome, but it's a palindrome. In fact, Able was I ere I saw Elba. In his debut novel, Able Was I, author Drew Banks addressed the need we all have to return to places that we have been, places that evoke emotion, places that amaze, inspire, and on later reflection, inform us all. Joining us on the program is Drew Banks, author of the novel Able Was I, and a North Carolinian. Welcome to the program, and welcome home, Drew.
Well, thank you, Frank.
Take your phone calls, 877-962-9862. Able Was I. Tell us a little bit about, give us the summary here.
It's about a man who is drifting through life in passive search of something that he doesn't quite understand. Actually, I didn't even understand it when I was writing it. It's not quite happiness. It's not quite success. It's something that I've recently termed as salvation.
And the plot summary is, kid gets out of college. He's going to make his way to Europe like so many kids do. He hasn't thought too much about his sexuality at all till he gets to the island of Elba on this trip when he meets Antonio, and then is forced to, after an encounter with Antonio, think about his sexuality in a way that he finds very disturbing and very difficult.
Right. I don't know if it's his sexuality and the experience with Antonio that he finds difficult, or the sexuality portion of that. What he finds difficult is the fact that Antonio was a married man, that Antonio had 2 children, and he is disabled in a way that he doesn't understand for the next 15 years.
He does, though, finally get to New York, come to terms with his homosexuality. He has a partner, he has a great job. That could be the end of the story.
Could be the end of the story, but like most people who are drifting through life, many of us are in search of something to spark that passion in us. And he feels like something is going to happen to him. He is going to meet someone that will spark it, as opposed to taking ownership of his life.
And the sparking really is, in a sense, a recollection. He can't get away from that moment on Elba and goes back and forth.
That is what triggers it for him, as I think as many of us create nostalgic remembrances that we lock away our hopes in. He thinks that it's this experience on Elba that is disabling his life, when in fact it's not. But I don't want to give away the end of the story.
The passion it unleashes, however, is the thing that he's been repressing all this time, even though it looks like things are going fine, and even though he's sort of embraced his identity.
Exactly.
Which you might think is the hard part. Reminds me of Zora Neale Hurston in a lot of ways. In Their Eyes Were Watching God, there is the narrative that you can't escape of being black in a white-dominated society. But as you peel through the layers, it has more to do with your identity in the face of creation, rather than this sort of superfluous or maybe superficial, I should say, narrative.
Well, and what I've really found is that my women readers really resonate with this book as much as my gay male readers. And the reason is the disillusionment is, and the emotional depth of that disillusionment is not a gay issue. It is a human issue.
We are talking with Drew Banks today. Able Was I is his debut novel, and we will continue that conversation on the state of things when our program continues. Stay tuned. Able Was I is the title of the debut novel by Drew Banks. Drew Banks is with me today to talk about that novel. And, just before the break, you talked about the fact that there was these overarching narratives that you have to deal with. And in the book, there is a searing description of that encounter between Gray and Antonio. And you say that the publishers really wanted you to take that out of the book.
When I was shopping it around, I was told by one publisher in particular that it was too gay of a book for straight audiences and too straight of a book for gay audiences. And they would recommend that I tone down the sex scene and make it more about the human condition issue. And I responded, that's what it is about. And that includes intense sexuality. So why strip it out?
So let me ask you, is this a gay novel?
I don't think it is. I think what I would like to achieve is to rise above gay fiction. I would like to, this is very hopeful of me, but I would like to be a Michael Cunningham. I would like to see my book have gay characters in it, but really hit the level of literature that I think I can hit.
What you do in this book is peel through that layer of narrative. It's one that you can't ignore. It's with us wherever you go, but it turns out not to be the source of Gray's identity, and that's what he discovers.
Yeah, the reader even may think in the first half of the novel that Gray's issue is about sexuality. And one of the surprises is that it's not about sexuality at all. It's about his inability to take control of his life and his desire for someone to intervene or something to intervene. And that is so much of a general human condition issue.
Would you do a reading for us to set this up? In fact, this is the reading on page 6. In Able Was I, it describes Gray, the protagonist, standing in line for orientation at your alma mater, North Carolina State, where he meets two friends, Miriam and Pete.
Miriam and Pete. And a lot of this, as you know, authors, especially first-time authors, take elements of fact and blow them up and over-dramatize them. So that is what this is. This sounds very much like my first day of orientation at NC State. Okay, so after after he had met Miriam and Pete, let me set this up a little bit. He starts chatting with them, and then we shift to 4 years later, right before graduation, and they are now living together, Miriam, Pete, and Gray, and they are celebrating. Drinking turned to chugging, turned to beer bongs, turned to sentimentality, as each confided his post-collegiate aspirations. First Miriam with her New York dream, and then Pete's Peace Corps plans. When it got to Gray, he speculated about a job offer from the Research Triangle firm where he had worked the past 3 summers. Stopping mid-sentence, he would realize that he, the obsessive, structured one of the 3, had never given serious thought to life after college. The night's mood was about to downshift when Miriam looked up, smiling and clear-eyed. "Let's go to Europe." Miriam's enthusiasm invigorated the merrymaking, and the 3 returned to the topic that had captivated all of Raleigh since State's miraculous NCAA championship victory the previous spring. Could Valvano do it again? Somehow, through the memory loss of much of what was said that night, Europe stuck.
The trip to Europe and the idea of memory are really two themes that animate this book. First, the idea of exotic places, I think you said that significant events in one's life occur in unfamiliar places, and that takes us to Europe. Talk about sort of setting us apart from our familiar surroundings.
I think when we are visiting places, we open ourselves up to events and people that we wouldn't in our normal everyday routine. And actually, the nascence of this book was a conversation I had at a dinner party where I was talking to a woman, and I said, wouldn't it be interesting if your life was formed primarily by the events of a place that was completely unfamiliar to you? And that's how
So it's off to Elba.
Then it's off to Elba. And I'd been to Elba accidentally 3 times. Similar to the book. So
Accidentally?
Well,
Shipwreck?
No. No, it's really easy to get to Elba from Italy. There's a ferry from Piombino, so it's a very inexpensive way to see the Mediterranean.
And the idea of memory and palindrome, I suppose, plays a part in this. A sentence that reads forward and backward is, in many ways, what Gray is doing. He has to go back to that initial encounter to try to make sense of things.
That's exactly right. And, it's funny, I didn't write the book with that intention. It's when I got to the end of the book and someone pointed out to me that, do you realize that you had him going back to the very beginning and almost replicating the beginning of his life? And I was like, that truly was not the intention of using. I shouldn't say that, should I? I shouldn't make myself sound very intelligent and have planned that the whole time, but that's not what I did.
No, you've already deflated that earlier.
Okay.
No, of course that's what, and that makes it all the more interesting. So did the title come much later, or did you have the title all the way through?
The title came midway through the book. And I was excited when I came up with the title. The title, because Elba was the place I chose, I first chose Florence because I'd been to Florence many times. And then I had pretty significant events happen on Elba, not the ones in this book, unfortunately, but pretty significant ones nonetheless. And so when I chose Elba, the palindrome just popped into my head.
And, of course, it's the place of the most famous exile in European history, So, and Gray's emotions, to a certain extent, and his identity are in exile.
And that I did think of, early on in the book, the fact that exile would play a theme throughout the book, not just for Gray, but for some of the side characters as well.
You are a businessman, an engineer, so there's that kind of thinking. And then you have written a lyrical, perhaps poetic novel, which doesn't seem to be possible for a businessman and a technical guy, a technical mind. Do they spring from the same mind, or do you have to turn one on and turn one off?
Both. I think I'm an entrepreneur, and I think both literature and entrepreneurialism are about creation. One is about creation of things that enable and entertain, and the other is about creation of things that entertain and inspire. As far as the poetry part and the love of words, that truly is a separate part of that is the right side of the brain versus my engineering side of the brain. But the obsessiveness of editing, I go back to being an engineer.
That's when you're the engineer. Well, how about crafting the novel itself? You talked about things that surprised you, things that crept up on you. How much of an engineer are you when it comes to cobbling this plot together?
Well, it's funny. When I started, I outlined the book like I did my business books, and I would start, and I did character profiles, and I would start writing, and the characters would start a dialogue, and they would change, and I would go back and rewrite, and they would change. And there was one scene, a character named Jane, who I really had in my mind was going to be this corporate backbiting woman. And there was a conversation that Gray had with Jane on the plane, and Jane surprises Gray, and Jane surprised me. And that was when I realized how different literature is from business writing. She turned into an amazing woman with a lot of depth that I did not plan.
Did you fight with her at first when she tried to take over the novel?
No, I didn't. I fought in the beginning, and this scene is midway through the book. Somewhere in the middle of the book, and most readers feel it, I let go, and I had no idea where the story was going. And that's when the story, actually, the pace picks up, and I think some of the characters deepen. And a lot of readers have told me that. But I do believe that the structure, and I am an engineer, I do believe you need enough structure to allow chaos to reign. And same in the literature, you need enough structure to allow the literary process to unfold.
But you did say that when it comes to the style, the literary style in this book, that you did have to sort of turn part of your brain off. Tell me how that works. Do you have to sit down and say, do you find yourself pushing that side of you away, or do you sort of fall into a bliss and let it go?
Oh, a bliss or abyss?
The blissful abyss, which is where a lot of good stuff is coming.
Unfortunately, it's more abyss. You can go, and many writers will tell you this, you can drop so deep into this obsession. Maybe this is a combination of the engineering side as well, because you become so obsessed with words and structure and cadence and the lyrical nature of a sentence. When I was preparing, coming in here and looking at some of my sentences, I was like, wow, I should take that word out. It just the flow doesn't quite work when I'm reading it out loud. And I don't know whether that obsession is my literary side, or is it's my engineering side, or a combination.
Well, why don't you give us another sample of that, and we'll be the judge. This book, as we say, goes back and forth, uses a lot of jumping around in time. And I think here we have an example of Gray reminiscing about his childhood Christmas, and shows some early signs of his family growing apart. And maybe you can give us a little more setup.
Right. Throughout the book, Gray will see things that will trigger memories, and that's the way I actually fill out the context of Gray as well as other characters. And at this point, he's driving through New York City, and the tree at Rockefeller Center has just been erected. And he's in a cab, and he leans back in the cab and has this memory. It was Christmas morning, mid-morning. Gray was 12. A few years before, the thrill of Christmas had faded. This year, he didn't awake in pre-dawn darkness to sneak heart-pounding into the living room to be the first one to see the presents their parents had stayed up half the night wrapping. His father hadn't slept on the couch as a sentinel against his poaching. Rather, he was there because at some point, the couch went from Christmas Eve watch post to his occasional late night falling asleep in front of the TV spot to his permanent bed.
Able Was I, Drew Banks' debut novel. He's my guest today. And when you talk about not only does he go back in time, but it's a kind of, there's a lot of dream work at play here, or dream play at work here. The idea that the mind is sort of trying to inform us one way or another, and then we've got this job. It's a narrative that's working. I have a partner. I have a job. Leave me alone. Get these dreams and memories out of my head.
Right. And again, the dreams and memories and the drifting is all part of his disabling, or his disability. He believes that if he dreams of something in the past, like the experience with Antonio, or a hope in the future, like maybe a next experience with Antonio or someone else, that these will spark that thing in him, which success hasn't done, which a beautiful apartment overlooking the Hudson hasn't done, which a long-term relationship hasn't done. He's hoping that something will do it for him.
And this passion is a thing that may elude narrative altogether. There's no way to structure this in terms of jobs, partners, experience.
But true, there's not. But we think there is. We think that if we just have one thing more, the grass is always greener, then that is going to enliven our lives.
And you'll get back to that feeling, whatever it was,
Exactly.
That was really the bliss or the abyss that you find yourself in. You went to NC State. Did you have training in creative writing there?
I didn't. I was a double major computer science electrical engineer. My one humanities course was history of science, so I was and then I went to business school at MIT, so I had a pretty straight and narrow techie background.
And you've written two business books.
2 business theory books, yes.
Yeah. Does this writing now, do you find that you can go back and write another one of those books?
My publisher has asked me to consider another business book, and yes, I can. I mean, I'm also starting my own business, so I get excited about the concept of creation, period. I will say the novel was harder than either business book. And I've gotten a lot more joy out of it when people read it and it resonates. It's very different from me than sparking a new concept in business. I don't know.
But they're both, as you suggest, forms of creation and creativity.
They are, but there's something, I don't know, maybe it's because of the poetic nature of the book. And when I see something in people's eyes, or I see their soul, open to me. That doesn't happen in business that often, but it does with this book.
You have this book, the novel, is self-published. The 2 business books were professionally published. Talk about the difference in those 2 experiences.
I have a wonderful publisher for my business books, Josie Bass, and I was approached to publish both of those books. So it was a great process for me. The editor that was assigned to me is fantastic, and they took care of all the promotion for me. I chose to self-publish because my business was getting started at the same time. And as I told you, I had a couple of hurdles when I approached publishers. It is very, very difficult to self-publish a book and actually get distribution in bookstores, get anybody to review it. Fortunately, I'm a business guy, so I know a thing or two about promotion. But it is a very arduous task because it's very difficult for bookstores to sell POD books or self-published books because of the discounting and return policies of POD publishers. So I would advise anyone going into this, if they're really looking to become an author, understand the amount of self-promotion that you will have to do. And this has been a year after this book is published, and I'm still doing it. I love it. But for some people, for a creative type, a pure creative type, that's arduous.
I would think, because then you really want to get back to the next book. And
Exactly.
Here you are talking to some guy on the radio, and you'd rather be somewhere else.
Frank, come on, I love this.
Tell us a little bit, and you have to pose for your own pictures on the cover.
Yeah.
Tell us about that. It's a guy jumping off a rock in a little skimpy swimsuit.
That it is.
Into water.
In the water. I actually, there was a Parisian fashion photographer who sent me a picture of a boy jumping into the water in Elba that I fell in love with. And we were negotiating that photo. And all of a sudden, the last minute, he retracted and said, "I'm not going to sell it to you for anything." And I had already fallen in love with the photo. So some friends of mine and I were in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, and I was complaining about not having that photo. And my friend Tracy picked up a camera and she goes, let's recreate it. And so that's how my photo appeared on the cover of the book.
Yeah, well, you saved yourself a couple bucks there. If you're self-publishing, not a bad idea.
And
it's a great photo.
And it's my friend's photo, which I love. Everything about this has my friends and family in it.
Drew, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you, Frank.
Drew Banks is a businessman and a novelist. Tonight he'll be reading excerpts from his book, Able Was I, at Quail Ridge Books and Music in Raleigh, 7 o'clock tonight if you want to see Drew Banks. That's the state of things for today. Thank you for listening. If you've got a comment, want to hear an archived edition, go to the website, please, stateofthings.org. This is North Carolina Public Radio, a broadcast service of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. I'm Frank Stasio.